Hey, what up? Hey, what up? What the hell's going on, bro? Alright, listen to me. Listen to me good. If you did not know, Kled is getting buffed again. Now he just got buffed recently. They just buffed his W cooldown by 1 second at all ranks, and they lowered his ult cooldown a bit, small amount, especially early game. But they're actually buffing him again. This is a world record. The whole last video that I talked about the last Kled buffs, remember I was talking about how that was the first time ever that he got directly buffed. You know, not a compensation buff, not anything. It was the first time he got directly buffed for no reason other than that he was bad. This is now the second time that this has ever happened. And these buffs are going through on 12.13. So the hotfix patch 12.12b just went live. It's already alive on live servers. But these other changes, all the changes in white text, are for next patch, which is in like 2 weeks. It'll be on the 13th, July 13th. At least for my for NA region, but around that time will be the next patch where these Kled buffs go live. So if you haven't seen them already, what's on the PB right now for Kled is that the first hit of his Q, this is mounted Q, we're talking about the bear trap, the first hit of his Q has a 5% higher AD ratio, and the Q2, which is the pull, the yank, you know, the second part of the Q, if you actually stay in tether range, is a 10% higher AD ratio, so 15% higher AD ratio overall, assuming you hit both parts of your Q. Now, when you hit minions, you know, you can't pull them, you can only get the first hit. So, I mean, it's a very minor buff to his wave clear. It's like, you know, on those occasions where you Q whip the backline and they live 1 health, you know, maybe you kill them now with this buff depending on your items. So that could help, but then other than that, you're going to be seeing like 40-50 more damage on your Qs mid to late game with like pretty standard bruiser builds. So nothing crazy, but you know, it could add up. And then they buffed his W cooldown again, 1 second lower at all ranks again, from 12 to 6 to 11 to 5. Now I don't know why they buffed his W cooldown again. I feel like that was kind of, I don't know. They just did it, and his W is always up now, since you max it second, and your normal build includes so much haste. At least for me, the standard bruiser build is easily getting me to 55 to 60% CDR, like not having to go out of my way or anything. I don't even run Transcendence anymore, really. Rarely now do I go Transcendence because I used to always run that rune, but there's just so much ability haste in the game now that I don't feel like I need to run it. You know, you can just go, Cleaver gives you 30 haste by itself. You know, Gore gives you 20, and then 7 for every legendary item you have now. They just buffed it recently to give more haste. I go Chainsword pretty often, which gives 25 haste. You know, Maud, Death Stance give haste. Randoms gives haste. I mean, even if you build items that don't give haste, you're still getting 7 from Gore. So I'm easily getting over 50% CDR every game, minimum. And at that point, your W is like under a 3-second cooldown. And if you don't know the way Kled W cooldown works, is the cooldown doesn't start until the ability is over. You have to fully use the ability or it has to time out for the cooldown to start. So there's no way to have 100% uptime on it. But it's up pretty much every 2-3 seconds right now. Now this buff only really matters early game. Your W will be up a little bit sooner in lane, which is nice and helps you farm, and it also helps you use your W to CS and not have to worry about not having it for the all-in as much because you'll have it up sooner. It doesn't really matter late game because, like I said, you're already going to have so much CDR normally. I mean, if you're building like how I feel like is a standard build, it's going to be like a 0.2, 0.3 second difference. You're not really going to notice it. And like I said, his Q will be 40-50 more damage with regular items. Again, regular items being just like Cleaver, Gore, Bruiser items after that. So I don't think these, you know, if you're going to ask me what my opinion is of these buffs, how good or impactful I think they'll be, I don't think they'll really matter much at all. By the time that you have, you know, a decent number higher on your Q AD ratio, like with the AD ratio buff, you're not going to notice it. It's going to be later on in the game where, you know, most people are going to have armor, so it's getting, you know, the ability gets double reduced by armor, obviously, because the first hit gets reduced, and then the second hit, so you know, it'll add a little bit of damage to your Q, really minor, and then his W will up like W will be up literally like milliseconds, like 0.2, 0.3 seconds sooner. I feel like these are buffs you're never gonna notice in actual gameplay. Outside of the early game WF will be slightly noticeable. Now besides these, they're also like nerfing Divine Sunder pretty hard. You know, assuming this goes through to live, it's going from 12% max HP to 6%. They're also adding an AD ratio to it, to the proc, but you know, it's a whole 6% less max health damage, and it heals for less than it does on live. So those are pretty good. You know, that change is pretty good for Kled because, of course, that item just shits on him. I mean, all percent HP damage shits on him, but, you know, Divine Cinder is a very common item, and it does, you know, one of the most amount of percent HP damage sources in the game. So that nerf's pretty good for him, you know, especially because he doesn't buy the item ever. You know, and also I talked to a rider a bit who works on balancing, and he said that it's pretty unlikely that these changes listed here are going to be any different on the next patch. You know, Riot's also going on break for like this North American holiday coming up. I mean, it's July 4th. I mean, I don't think that's really that obscure. I don't have to say that, but they're going on like a week break or whatever, so I'm pretty sure all these changes are going to go through, especially the Kled specifically changed. That's what I was talking about with them. Because my initial impression of these buffs was I was pretty disappointed. Now, I can't be mad. At the end of the day, you can't really complain. I can't be mad. You know, getting buffs is getting buffs. You know, you can't say it's placebo because these are buffs. They're something, you know, they are something that will impact the game in some way, even if it's a very minor way. You know, you'll feel it sometimes. But I was kind of disappointed because, like, in my opinion, you know, if you watch the last video or if you've been watching my streams or whatever, then you probably have heard me mention a million times, but, you know, the worst things about Kled still are the same things. The way he takes percent HP damage is too high, and the whole game is filled with percent HP damage. Every champion either has it now, or like rework champions have it, new champions have it, some kind of percent damage, or they have some kind of execute or increased damage to low targets or anything like that. And if they don't have it, almost every champion will build it in this game. They're either building Bork or Divine. You know, luckily that's getting nerfed, but you know, or they're going Leandries, or they're going Lord Dominic's, or they're going Gale Force Collector. You know, anything. They can go any of these items. Eclipse, and it just shits on Kled because just so much max HP. You're just surrounded by max HP damage at all times, regardless of the champion. You know, when I'm laning top lane, I'm fed early game, I'm winning lane, and the enemy jungler comes out of the jungler, right? Comes out of the jungle, excuse me. And he has, or she, Divine Sunder, Red Smite, right? It doesn't matter what champion it is. Like, that's the problem with me with Kled. It doesn't matter what champion emerged from the jungle with Divine Sunder, Red Smite, I can't fight them. Like, I'm thinking in my head, I have to avoid that champion. Same thing with a champion pulling up with Bork. You know, Bork is getting more common now because Bork is really strong as an item. It got a lot of buffs. And, you know, durability patch, everyone has more HP. Everyone's going this Bork Sunfire build, too. Is, like, getting more and more popular. So, you know, that item's everywhere. Leandri's Zhonya's is still pretty common. Every ADC goes Lord Dominic's. Some of them still go Gale Force. Collector's a pretty bad item, but some people still buy it, and it's still good against Kled. Because of the execute when you're dismounted. But it's just an example of, like, you're just constantly dealing with items. It's not even the champions that I'm worried about. It's like, it's the items is what scares me more than the champs. I feel like that's such a lame state to be in. And these changes, I feel like, don't do anything about that. That's, in my opinion, the worst thing about them. Now, to be honest, like, you know, I wasn't not expecting them to change anything related to that, his HP damage that he takes, or change percent HP damage items. I mean, they are nerfing Divine, which is really good, but other than that, I wasn't expecting them to change anything like that. So I was hoping for the next best thing, which in my opinion, the very next best thing they could have buffed for Kled would have been armor pen, obviously, percent armor pen. I also mention that all the time on my stream. If you know, or watch my other videos or whatever, you probably hear me mention all the time. You know, Kled is pretty much the only bruiser in the game that does not have any hybrid damage. He doesn't have any pen in his kit, and he doesn't have any AD steroids, so that's what every other bruiser has. Every other melee carry has one of those things, because if you don't, you just fall off. Obviously, you're a champion that only does damage from melee range. You need one of those things to not fall off. And every game after the durability patch in these days just stalls to at least 25, 30, 35 minutes for me. All my games are going longer. And once you get to that point in the game, you're just like, if you don't have one of those damage types, you're just useless. Like, you just fall off immediately. Even the squishiest champs get over 100 armor, 120 armor, and he gets 120 armor level 18 with no armor items. Like, it's just an example of a squishy champion after the durability patch. You need pen, and even squishy champs go Zanyas, or they go Tabi or GA or whatever, or they have a Locket or a Mountain Dragon, anything that gives them armor. And it's like, you need pen. You just have to build pen every game. And it would be nice if, like, instead of his Grievous wounds, they just shafted his Grievous completely on his Q, because it's useless anyway. They chain nerf Grievous. They might as well just get rid of it on his Q and either give him pen there on his Q, like on the pole, or they could just give it to him exactly like Pantheon. Again, I say this all the time, but just give it exactly like Pantheon. Every rank of his ult, he gets % pen passively because it's a roaming ultimate. He doesn't do anything in combat, really. Does very little in combat, so it'd be nice to have some kind of pen somewhere so you don't fall off as hard. He already has all these other things gating him as the game goes on, which I feel like are just like outdated mechanics. Like, his passive is still a locked 30-second cooldown all game. I don't know why. And he still has the 20% reduced auto damage when he's dismounted, which is like, for you, it's half the game. You're gonna be playing dismounted Kled a lot every game. You just have to. It's part of his kit. So I don't know why it's still 20% less damage on half your damage, half the game you're playing. It's ridiculous. But they didn't give him that. They gave him these two buffs. And the most frustrating parts of these buffs, I already said they're not going to be, I feel like they're not going to be that noticeable. But the most frustrating part for me is like, man, if this is what they wanted to do, right? If they wanted to buff one of his AD ratios and lower one of his cooldowns, right? If they just swapped it, dude. If they just swapped these two abilities and which one was got which buff, it'd be 100 times better. If they lowered his Q cooldown 1 second every rank, it'd be so much better, because then we get a partial revert of that 2-second nerf on his early game Q that he got a while back that I feel like ruined a lot of his matchups, because you can't bait out as much. You can't bait out an ability as much and then engage when your Q's back up, because your Q's just down for longer. Their ability is going to be up too soon, or it's already up by the point that you could punish them. And if they put the AD ratio buff, imagine if they gave the W 15-20% more AD scaling, because his W is % max HP damage on the 4th hit, which is the impactful part of it. Is the 4th hit. The attack speed's helpful for remounting, but the 4th hit is what actually does damage. If they gave the AD ratio to that part, it would actually be relevant, because we're on the patch where everyone has more health. Everyone builds health pretty often. Every item gives health. Every AP champ happens to buy health. Every bruiser stacks health unintentionally, because every item just gives HP. So that would actually be an impactful buff. So it's kind of annoying. I feel like they went like the worst way about buffing him. And what's pretty lame is, like, I talked to, again, I said earlier, but I talked to a writer after I saw these buffs, because I just wanted to give my reasoning. I don't want to just like complain. At the end of the day, your champion getting buffed is pretty nice when it's a not popular champ. It's pretty lucky that Riot even like puts him in the patch notes. But I went to the Riot and I was like, bro, like, I just tried to explain my reasoning of why I feel like these buffs don't really do anything, and the reasons I feel like he's bad right now, at least in higher elo. Of course, you can climb with any champion in lower elo, but when you actually get to higher elo, I feel like he's pretty bad for a lot of reasons, like the ones I said in the last video. I'm not going to go over everything again, just because, I'm sure you guys have already heard me say it, but I tried explaining, % pen, pretty important, doesn't need the Grievous on his Q, the 30-second on his passive cooldown, the 20% damage nerf, like all this stuff I feel like makes him feel really bad in the current state of the game, if they're not going to change how he takes % HP damage, which I doubt, because that'd be like a mini rework, or they'd probably require more work of them, when I feel like, there's plenty of easy ways to buff Kled that would take, it'd be really simple, really straightforward, and you wouldn't even have to touch him again after. So the reason I bring it up to him is because these kind of buffs bother me, because it's like, what if one day they do give him pen? Like, what if one day they actually do buff him in ways that matter? Now we're gonna have to backtrack and get a bunch of nerfs, like consecutive nerfs, to like undo all these random, like really minor buffs that they gave him. And it's just like, we don't have to go through all that. We could have just, just done the, you know, actual important changes immediately that he needs, which to me feel like obvious changes. And from what I got from my conversation with the writer, like, they perfectly understand what's wrong with Kled. Like, he pretty much perfectly agreed to everything I was saying. Like, yeah, pen would be nice. Like, lower cooldown on the passive. He said much lower cooldown should be. It's just like kind of like an outdated mechanic. And then just the state of being dismounted, the state of remounting, all that stuff could be improved. So it sounds like they know exactly what's wrong with Kled, and they're still looking at him, and they're still thinking of ways to hopefully buff him. But you know, the design team is like a team, and I guess they all have to agree on stuff. So I guess, you know, we don't know how long that stuff could take if it ever actually goes through. So, you know, just as a summary, you know, I don't really like these buffs. I don't feel like they're that impactful overall. Would have preferred pen, would have preferred something with this passive, anything else, pretty much anything other than this is pretty much how I feel about it. But it is better than nothing, you know, it's better than literally nothing, so I can't complain too much. Honestly, even bigger than these buffs is that Divine Sunder gets nerfed. Unironically, the Divine Sunder nerf is a much bigger buff to Kled than these two changes are. Now, you might have also seen that Lethality Mythics are getting buffed. Buffed in quotations, I mean, it's a 5 move speed per legendary item is additional mythic passive to those items. I mean, the main reason the Lethality Mythics are pretty bad right now is because they all got individual nerfs over time when they were strong. And then the durability patch comes out, everyone has more health, more armor, so lethality is just so much worse. So it's making these mythics worse, you know, obviously relative to the patch and the changes. And they didn't buff any of the damage or any of the effects, they just give it 5 move speed per item. I mean, I don't know. I don't think that really does anything. Am I going to build lethality mythic on Kled? No, I used to build them all the time, but I think they're just pretty bad now. I don't think any of these items are worth it. Maybe you could go Eclipse. I just don't like Eclipse anymore, you know. I don't like building a Dirk or a Vamp Scepter early game. I feel like they're useless. And the 5 move speed, I mean, at least the one positive of this 5 move speed per item shit for Kled is that at least when you're dismounted, you know, your move speed is 285. That's now your new base move speed. Excuse me, when you're dismounted. He's 345 when he's mounted, and you're 285 when dismounted. So when you're 285 base speed, percent move speed buffs aren't, you know, giving you much because you have such a low number to increase by a percentage. So flat move speed is at least helping you get a little bit closer to like a regular chance move speed. I mean, you're still not close, but like I said, I'm not going into lethality mythics anyway after this patch. I still think they're pretty bad. They need some kind of like damage or effect change. 5 move speed, I feel like that doesn't change anything about them. Also, they're nerfing Eclipse range proc, which is nice for Kled too, because range champions, Graves, Draven, sometimes Ezreal might go Eclipse. So they'll be doing less percentage HP damage too. It's pretty good. The only mythics I feel like are viable on Kled now are Gore Drinker, just because of the stats. You could go Sunfire just because the item is so strong. I haven't really tested it much yet though, but that item is just really good. So if you either go Gore, and then the next best thing would be Sunfire. After that, I guess one of the lethality mythics, but I don't think I don't feel like they're that good. I wouldn't buy them, is what I'm trying to say. I guess that's pretty much it. I think I've pretty much gone through everything. Yeah, that's about it. What do you guys think about the buffs? Again, they are buffs. They're not placebo. They are something. So I guess we should just be happy we're getting something. But yeah, I definitely would have preferred, like, almost anything else. Almost anything else I would have preferred, probably. Hopefully they still are looking at Kled, and hopefully we do get, like, an impactful change without having to just, like, nerf everything back. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got to say. Thanks for watching. Hope you guys are doing well. Peace out for now. I got a lot of videos coming this week of VODs that I played on stream. I streamed a lot recently. Yeah, see you guys later, bro. See you guys on the other side. Peace.